If reality is constantly shifting, are the perceptions of various states of being, for example being ill or cold with the flu, are those perceptions simply there to explain the sensations those shifts cause? Right, so another way of saying what I just said is, does the story you are living exist in time with the compression state of reality itself? And by extension, is every single type of awkward state merely a representation of that compression, so we do not feel fear that something outside of our awareness is recognisably affecting us? The varying effects of chemicals on your body and mind are one of the only ways you can tell your external world probably exists in the way that you perceive it, considering the distance of an object is relative to its perceived size. So you've got the sun all the way out there. The closer you move the sun, the smaller you have to make it for it to be the exact same perceived size. That's basically what I'm saying there. With concepts like augmented reality and AI around, that's very important, isn't it? Because if it's an augmented reality, the sun will only ever be that size, and you could always make up a new distance for every single day, and all you'd have to do is change the size of it every single day and it could just stay in the exact same place, right? And you've got concepts like Dyson sphere around, which wrap themselves around a sun and they drink the sun's energy. Also, what if that's happening to you? So you've got things called chemicals around, where things like cold and flu, when you've got cold and flu, it puts you into a hefty awkward state, which, although it does corroborate you being in real life, it doesn't quite do the same as if you have too much sugar, yeah, and it makes you ill. Yeah, you have to be interactive with your environment to create an issue, to create an awkward state, for it to corroborate the fact that you live in a world and not in an augmented reality, and that is a simple fact. What I wonder is, if reality is constantly shifting, are the perceptions of various states of being, for example being ill or cold with the flu, are those perceptions simply there to explain the sensations those shifts cause? Right, so another way of saying what I just said is, does the story you are living exist in time with the compression state of reality itself? And by extension, is every single type of awkward state merely a representation of that compression, so we do not feel fear that something outside of our awareness is recognisably affecting us? Okay. I just joined all those little dots up. I hope you enjoyed that. What I'm about to mention is a large part of what my channel is about, because I don't want to step on any toes, but I can extrapolate a huge amount of goodness from what I talk about. Okay, so this is basically the foundation for my channel. Context has the word con at the beginning of it, because context can be faked when you fake a past. Yeah. Words have derivatives, which means the above state, what I just said, is contextually false. Yeah. So when you actually look at where the word con is derived from in Latin, it doesn't mean what I just said it means. Okay? But that doesn't matter, because the context could be faked. Yeah? This is the thing, it's like saying this statement is false. It's the exact same thing. It's an argument that just doesn't work. You can't pretend that there's a derivative if my starting line is the past has been faked. Okay? So do you follow what I'm stating? Yeah, right. So context can be faked. That also shows that context can be faked. And this applies to space before you have bought a powerful enough telescope. It applies to history until you become an archaeologist. It applies to a war until you've seen somebody get blown to pieces. Basically, you either see it to believe it, or you believe simply what you're told. Have you ever heard of the concept of a rumour mill? How big do you think a rumour mill could get? How big do you think a rumour mill would have to get before you can recognise the difference? There you go. It turns out it turns life into an involuntary game of chess if you're in a rumour mill, doesn't it? Slowly learning the ins and outs of deep, complex concepts until we recognise we must be being lied to. That is basically the crux of my channel, and I know it's a bit absurd, and that is why I feel quite comfortable doing it, because otherwise I'd have to have opinions like all these other people and then get into arguments like all these other people. No. I'll put this, I don't know if this speaks to you at all, but I think that there are so many like forces overlayered with each other. They're all stepping on each other in a way, getting in each other's way a little bit here and there, and I think one of them is micro manipulations created by a telepathic field. the augmented reality and the God impersonation software are most popular online services. When they finally noticed, mainly because back engineering onto such a basic 3D reality with impossible multi-dimensional concepts can only mean a handful of stuff. So so what's trying to be implied is beyond the ability of a three-dimensional reality. Okay, so that's why I called it, what did I call it? The God impersonation software. Okay. Interference from external sources under the guise of serendipity and multidimensionality. So it's all about cover. The idea that conspiracy theories hide the truth. Merely potential truths can hide an ascertainable truth. So too much unknown disarms what could otherwise be known for certain. Right. I want to talk to you about what bothers me. Okay, so it is cold half the year, so almost every single person is stuck indoors. Everything costs money, so it's possible to cause people to be stuck indoors on those cold days. Right, we got given boxes that spend time giving us advice and making thinly veiled threats, just in case it just so happens to be a bad day. You just so happen to not have any money. They could cause that. Right. Something else that bothers me is even if God drowns a kitten, he is still good because God is good. Yeah. I think it's all subliminal messaging in computer programming. And those two are real things. Our brains are supposed to be computers. Right. A writer's worst nightmare is having to work with a small amount of detail. Imagine you live miles away from anybody on a single dirt road. It restricts the storyline entirely. It's a tiny bit like tying up loose ends. What are the chances all the other witnesses died? Yeah. What are the chances that the story writer can be seen down the only two unlikely paths your storyline had to offer? Yeah. People behaving like NPCs by behaving selectively, in unison. And yet I have both a mother and a father. That is like saying real life is a computer game, and that is a crunch that I have had to cope with. What to think, say and do? Well, nothing matters if you're a computer game character, but everything matters if you're real life. You see the conundrum. Any life trap you may be stuck in always has two ways out. The intended way and an alternative way for those who should not have been caught in that trap. Basically, those creating the traps always add trapdoors. Otherwise, you could find yourself stuck in a classroom when you could teach the class. Right. Here, I put here Mandela. The Mandela effect are named after somebody who everybody believed was trapped and then magically was not. I think that's quite interesting. There's this really cool concept. Moses had 3 sons, and I think Abraham had 7 sons. And the idea that you can see in 7 different reflections of light, basically. So you've got 7 suns. So I've got 1 sun, so I can only see light that particular frequency of light reflects off of. Yeah. I imagine that some people can perceive multiple suns in the sky, and they can tell what suns are reflecting off of what objects. And there are objects all around me that I can't see at the moment, but other people can see because they have more than 1 sun. Yeah. I think that is to do with how the planet warps space-time, how the sun warps more space-time, and how the different beings on our planet can register a large spectrum of the Earth's space-time, or the frequency of light that it reflects, and depending on like where you're born, how your brain develops, etc., will decide those significant things. Yeah, I think that's quite interesting. The Bible means book, and you can say the last book of the Bible. That would be like saying the last book of the book. A principle common in energy healing and crystal therapy states that the left hand is for receiving, absorbing energy, while the right hand is for giving, projecting energy. Wearing crystals are directing focus on the left side brings in love, luck and healing, while the right side projects power, intention and action. I read a palmistry book when I was younger. I googled this. And there was an easy test for this. Invite your buds to a baby eating contest and see who turns up.